Today we're going to talk about a new educational technology called Hotseat. We're going to discuss how Hotseat works, the advantages and limitations of using Hotseat, and some best practices. Let's get started. Hotseat is a mobile learning application developed by the folks at Purdue University. Let's stop for a second and break down that term. So it's mobile, it's easy to move around, it uses wireless internet. Learning, it's used in the field of education. And application, it's a web-based software application. So Hotseat brings these three concepts together. It's a mobile software application that's used to enhance learning. Hotseat was developed to engage learners enrolled in large lecture classes. It enables learners to engage in discussions using Twitter, Facebook, the Hotseat website, or text messages on their mobile device. Hotseat was designed to leverage technology that the learners already bring into the classroom, such as cell phones, laptops, and iPod touches. So, how does it work? Each course has its own dedicated Hotseat page on the Hotseat website. Learners can post messages to Hotseat using their Facebook or Twitter accounts, sending text messages, or logging into the Hotseat website. The Hotseat course page aggregates all incoming information from learner and posts the messages to the Hotseat course page. Learners can post messages and can agree with other messages posted through the voting function. Now let's run through an example of how we'd use this in a large lecture class. So let's say I'm teaching a unit on geometry. I notice a learner has posted the question, what is the difference between an isosceles triangle and an isosceles right triangle? I look back at the site and see that 40 of the 100 learners in this class agree with this message. This tells me I need to address the question sometime during the lecture. So, at the appropriate time in the lecture, I can ask the learners to think, pair, share the question and clear up any confusion. So let's talk about the resources required to implement Hotseat. So, first and foremost with Hotseat, we require a wireless internet access in the lecture hall so students can access the application. Secondly, we need a student body with mobile devices, like laptops, cell phones, iPod touches. And finally, it's best if you project the Hotseat website in the classroom with a projector while you're using the application. Using Hotseat can challenge even the most seasoned lecturer. Here's what Sugato Chakravarti, professor of consumer science and retailing at Purdue University, has to say about using Hotseat in the lecture hall.
New things. You do different things to try to keep it for me, using different ways to deliver the same material and jazz it up in different ways, and being in a situation where I am vulnerable actually gives me that edge where I can stay fresh and I can deliver the material in a way that I want to. So for me, this risk actually adds to a certain level of excitement that takes me out of my comfort zone.
From the learner's perspective, Hotseat allows them to ask questions in real time, anonymously, and using their preferred mobile device. Don't just take my word for it. Let's see what students at Purdue University have to say about Hotseat.
Hotseat is just an easy way to answer questions in class and without embarrassing yourself and raising the hand in a big lecture hall.
I like Hotseat because it's easy. You can text it with your iPhone. You can get on your computer.
I think it's useful.
Now let's move on to talk about some advantages of using Hotseat in your classroom. Instructors can benefit from the instant feedback they receive from learners, which they can then use to assess learning in the classroom. No longer will the instructor have to wait for the midterm to find out that half the class does not fully understand the core concept from the first week of class. Instructors can ask probing questions during the lecture and get instant response from learners. So also, learners have the ability to ask questions anonymously, which will engage learners that may have been too shy in the past to raise their hand and ask questions during lecture. And another benefit to using Hotseat is that learners can log into the Hotseat course webpage at any time and post questions and responses. This means that the class discussions can extend beyond the time constraints of the traditional lecture slot. So in order for Hotseat to be used effectively in the classroom, there must be an instructional need for the technology to enable learning. If there is no instructional need for Hotseat, Hotseat will just become another unused gadget or distraction in the classroom. Hotseat leverages hardware that learners bring to the class anyway, such as mobile phones, laptops, and iPad touches. We talked about this before. But by using the learner's hardware instead of the institution's hardware, we are shifting the costs associated with using this technology from the institution to the learner. Therefore, in most institutions, learners will bear the brunt of the costs of using Hotseat. Finally, we must consider institutional policies which may place constraints on using Hotseat in the classroom. For example, consider the case of an institution that has a policy whereby an instructor cannot mandate an educational activity which requires learners to input personal information on a server based in the US. Since Hotseat was created at Purdue University, their servers are most likely located in the US. Therefore, an instructor at this type of institution may not be able to implement Hotseat in the classroom. So let's move on to talk about best practices. Well, Hotseat is a platform technology and it can be used in many ways. This is why I recommend designing a strategy for using Hotseat in your classroom. Will you use Hotseat to clear up the muddiest points from class? What will you use it for? I suggest going back to your lesson plans and deciding how and where Hotseat would best fit into your lectures. After designing a strategy to use Hotseat, make sure to communicate that strategy to your learners. Since Hotseat is a new technology, both you and your learners will be figuring out how to use it effectively. Let your learners know what you expect of them on Hotseat and what they can expect of you. So in short, Hotseat has the potential to create a collaborative learning environment in the classroom, but any instructor should first consider its instructional use and any institutional policy constraints before bringing Hotseat to the classroom. For further information on Hotseat, please check out the following websites, articles, and podcasts.